What is up everyone, Xeno What If here. If any of you are new to the channel then don't forget to subscribe to the channel. If any of you wanted to actually see more amazing content, and leave a comment down below for new ideas of what ifs. And here to bring in the movie called, What If Shallot DBZ takes on the mantle of being Spider-Man. This takes place in Marvel 616 comics. Across the different various versions of different alternate realities across the Marvel multiverse. What exactly would have happened if an individual, from a different universe entered the Marvel universe? What would have happened if Spider-Man died earlier, sacrificing himself? What would have happened if a Saiyan warrior took on the mantle of becoming Spider-Man, and taking on the responsibility of what it really needs to be a true hero? In the city of Manhattan of New York City, Spider-Man having his power unable to be used because of the power-dampening collar around his neck next to Reed Richards and for him to be nothing more than a future because of a Daily Bugle. And as Sinister Six began attacking Spider-Man tried his best. However, a portal appeared and out came a Saiyan warrior as he somersaulted and landing on his 2 feet. Looking around confused. Shallot. Okay, I'd admit that was rather. Shallot stopped talking, noticing heroes and villains. Looking at him and then looking directly at the skyline city of New York City itself. Shallot. I guess I might have taken no wrong turn. Kraven the Hunter threw a spear directly at Shallot, as he was about to actually catch the spear only for Spider-Man to sacrifice himself for a stranger he did not know. And as the spear pierced through his heart causing the arachnid hero to actually fall on the ground coughing blood. Shallot the young Saiyan warrior looked down at the young hero and was in absolute surprise and shock. Shallot. You idiots, why? Just don't die at me. Peter Parker, Spider-Man. Sorry. That's what a hero does. As the Green Goblin came in crapping Peter Parker, Spider-Man by the neck and snapping him causing his body to go limp on the ground. Shallot stood there in absolute shock, emotions running through his body of shock, anger, and sorrow. Transformed into Super Saiyan rushed towards the Green Goblin unable to react to a powerful punch shattering the rib cage of Green Goblin causing him to actually fly back into a nearby wall. Kraven the Hunter using hand-to-hand combat only for Shallot in Super Saiyan brutally breaking both arms of the Hunter leaving him crippled. Sandman and Rhino charged directly toward Shallot in Super Saiyan, as he transformed into Super Saiyan God, his golden hair turned into red hair as godlike aura emanated. Shallot in Super Saiyan God he rushed towards the Rhino brutally able to take him down and was able to actually use a nearby fire hydrant to spray Sandman turning him to mud. Shallot in Super Saiyan God rushing towards the Vulture clipping his wings off and slamming against the ground. So hard breaking every bone and organ in his body. And the next came was Electro as Shallot using his brilliant thinking was able to actually create some kind of conductor out of some junk trapping the Electro hero in some kind of device. Shallot in Super Saiyan God slowly turned his head to the leader of the Sinister Six Doc Ock who is actually staring at the Saiyan warrior in fear. Doc Ock. What kind of being are you? Shallot in Super Saiyan God. My name is Shallot. I am a Saiyan warrior, and the one is about to put you behind bars. As Shallot in Super Saiyan God moves so fast that not even Doc Ock could be able to track his movements as he was able to rip the mechanical arms from his back, crushing them into scrap and slamming his head against the concrete pavement knocking them out. The Fantastic Four members from Reed Richards, Susan Storm, Johnny Storm, and even Ben Grimm stood there in absolute silence. The civilians who are watching this see a man with incredible power was able to actually take down the Sinister Six with incredible effort. However, cops of 616 had their guns raised at Shallot in Super Saiyan God for stupidity reasons. NYPD Cop 1. Hands on the ground now. Shallot in Super Saiyan God slowly turned his head towards the 3 cops as he glared at them. Shallot in Super Saiyan God. You want to pull the trigger? Go ahead. Don't say I didn't warn you until you will end up in the hospital. The NYPD officers hesitated, their hands trembling violently against the triggers of their standard issue firearms. The oppressive, godlike heat radiating from Shallot's fiery red aura was suffocating, warping the very air around him and cracking the pavement beneath his boots. Before the standoff could escalate into a bloodbath, a brilliant blue force field materialized between the Saiyan and the police line. Susan Storm stepped forward, her hands raised in a placating gesture, while Reed Richards stretched his arm out to physically lower the lead officer's weapon. Reed Richards, stand down, officers. Your weapons won't even scratch him, and he just dismantled the Sinister Six single-handedly. He's not the threat here. Shallot scoffed, the intense crimson aura retracting into his body as his hair dropped back to its base black. He didn't care about the police, his gaze drifted back to the lifeless body of Peter Parker. A heavy silence fell over the cratered intersection, broken only by the groans of the crippled villains. Shallot, I don't know why you say to me a kid. At least you're half good heroes, then I'd like these clowns. Reed Richards retracted his elongated arm, his expression a mix of intense scientific curiosity and profound sorrow as he looked from Shallot to Peter's lifeless body. Reed Richards, we aren't trying to insult you. Kid is just a common figure of speech here. But you have to understand the sheer shock of this situation. The energy readings my suit just picked up from your body, they completely defy our known laws of physics. Johnny Storm descended from the sky, his flames extinguishing as his boots hit the cracked pavement. He looked at the brutally mangled Sinister Six, then at Peter. His usual cocky, hot-headed demeanor was entirely absent, replaced by pure shock. Johnny Storm, his voice cracking slightly, Pete, man, no. Shallot, he looked at the device around Spider-Man's neck. It was built by Reed Richards. This device, you built it. And he died. Tell me why did you actually put that device around his neck? You rubbered retard. Reed's elastic posture physically drooped, the insult hitting him harder than any physical blow ever could. He looked down at his own hands, his genius-level intellect suddenly feeling entirely useless in the face of such raw, irreversible tragedy. Reed Richards, his voice barely above a whisper, filled with heavy guilt, we had to. The Daily Bugle told us that he was a fugitive, that is why I built the power-dampening bracelet. It was a mistake. Shallot, glaring at the rubber member of the Fantastic Four with fury, you fucking idiot had no idea what's wrong with you. He was a great man who saved people. And you treated him like a criminal instead of a hero. Ben Grimm, the Thing, stepped forward, his heavy, rocky footsteps crunching on the debris. But he didn't raise his fists to defend Reed. Instead, he looked down at Peter's body, his heavy brow furrowed in deep, regretful shame. Ben Grimm, his voice a low, gravelly rumble, the kid's right, Reed. We let Jameson's rag do our thinkin' for us. We treated him like a menace just 'cause the Bugle printed it. Pete, he didn't deserve this. Susan Storm covered her mouth, tears welling in her eyes as the horrific reality of the situation crashed down on her. Johnny dropped to his knees next to Peter, his hands resting on his head in pure disbelief. They had essentially set the stage for the murder of one of New York's greatest protectors. Shallot scoffed in disgust, turning his attention entirely away from the Fantastic Four. His 540 IQ easily analyzed the structural integrity of the device around Peter's neck. He didn't even need tools to dismantle Reed's supposedly brilliant technology. Reaching down, Shallot gripped the power-dampening collar, flared a tiny fraction of his Saiyan ki, and crushed the device. It shattered like cheap plastic in his hands, falling away from Peter's neck. Shallot, tossing the broken pieces of the collar at Reed's feet, your genius just cost this universe its greatest defender. You let a newspaper dictate who the bad guys are. Where I come from, we judge a warrior by their actions, not by what some loudmouth with a printing press says. With surprising gentleness, Shallot knelt beside Peter. Using his quick thinking and innate understanding of complex mechanics, he carefully unlatched the web shooters from the fallen hero's wrists. Finally, he pulled the torn, bloodied mask from Peter's face, holding the red fabric tightly in his hands. He could feel the immense weight of the responsibility it represented. Shallot, standing up, his voice echoing with Saiyan pride and unwavering resolve, he died saving me. A complete stranger. If the heroes of this world are too blind and too easily manipulated to protect the innocent, then I'll carry his legacy myself. Shallot pocketed the web shooters and the mask, turning his gaze toward the towering skyscrapers of Manhattan. Shallot, clean up your mess, Richards. And tell whoever runs this Daily Bugle that their worst nightmare just arrived. With a sudden, explosive burst of speed that shattered the concrete beneath him, Shallot launched himself into the sky, leaving the guilt-ridden Fantastic Four standing alone with the crippled Sinister Six. Shallot landed silently on the roof of a modest, unassuming apartment building tucked away in Queens. To the rest of the world, this was just another building, but beneath the camouflage netting and holographic shielding lay his hidden rooftop lab. He walked past his makeshift outdoor kitchen, where the scent of a massive, half-finished fusion feast still lingered in the air, and threw his oversized backpack onto a reinforced steel workbench. He shrugged off his blue leather jacket, his black tail uncoiling from his waist and swishing thoughtfully behind him. "Shallot, all right, buddy. Wake up. We've got work to do." A small, sleek metallic sphere rolled out of his backpack. It hovered into the air, its optical sensor glowing a friendly blue as the mini AI drone booted up. "Shallot, scan these." He gently placed Peter Parker's battered web shooters and the torn red mask onto the scanning pad. As the drone ran a molecular analysis, Shallot's 540 IQ was already leagues ahead. He pulled up a holographic interface, his fingers flying across the light keys at speeds that would make even Tony Stark dizzy. In minutes, Shallot had completely reverse-engineered Peter's web fluid formula. But he didn't just copy it, he perfected it. By analyzing the tensile strength and chemical composition, Shallot synthesized a new variant, a hyper-compressed, key-resistant polymer that was virtually unbreakable. Next came the suit. If he was going to honor the fallen hero and protect this city, he couldn't just wear Peter's colors. He needed to be something new. A vanguard. He pulled up the schematics for his L-14 advanced armor. Shallot, muttering to himself as he adjusted the holograms, the traditional Saiyan armor is too bulky for acrobatic maneuvering in a cityscape. Need to streamline it, keep the high collar for neck protection, refine the plating over the vitals. Over the next few hours, the lab was filled with the sounds of hyper-advanced fabrication, welding, and key-infused forging. Shallot worked with absolute focus, blending his extraterrestrial technology with Earth's tactical gear. When the fabricator finally hissed open, releasing a cloud of cooling steam, Shallot stepped forward to inspect his creation. The Weaver Vanguard suit was a masterpiece of lethal efficiency and sleek design. The base, a dark, flexible bodysuit engineered to withstand intense G-forces and friction, allowing for both supersonic flight and fluid, spider-like agility. The armor, the L-14 advanced plating was forged from a lightweight, key-conductive alloy. It featured a high, protective collar and refined, matte black chest and shoulder plates with subtle, deep blue accents, a nod to his Sadala heritage. Tactical gear, modern utility belts and low-profile pouches were seamlessly integrated into the waist and thighs, holding extra web cartridges, tracking tracers, and miniaturized gadgets. The web shooters, Peter's original designs, were heavily modified, built directly into the sleek gauntlets of the L-14 armor, capable of firing standard webs, concussive blasts, or key-infused energy nets. The visor, instead of a full-cloth mask, the suit featured a high-tech tactical half-mask and visor that glowed with a faint, intimidating red optical interface, offering a full HUD, thermal imaging, and direct link to his AI drone. Shallot Weaver Vanguard strapped the final gauntlet onto his wrist. He clenched his fist, feeling the perfect balance of the L-14 armor. He was no longer just a Saiyan stranded in another universe, he was the city's new protector. He walked to the edge of the rooftop, the city lights reflecting off the dark plating of his suit. His tail swayed behind him, heavily armored but free to move. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, looking out over the skyline, "You did your best, Peter. Now, it's my turn." High above the rain-slicked streets of Manhattan, Wilson Fisk stood before the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse office. The kingpin of crime swirled a glass of expensive bourbon, a rare, genuine smile gracing his massive features. The news of Spider-Man's demise had reached him hours ago. The city was finally his to mold without that irritating, web-slinging gnat interfering. Suddenly, the encrypted comms on his mahogany desk crackled to life with panicked static. Fisk's earpiece. "Boss. Warehouse 47 is gone. Everyone's down. Bones broken, tech destroyed." It wasn't the cops, it was some. The transmission cut to static. Fisk's smile vanished. He crushed the crystal glass in his massive hand, ignoring the shards biting into his palm. Before he could bark an order to his elite guards, the penthouse plunged into absolute darkness. The backup generators didn't kick in. The automated laser grid defense system powered down with a pathetic whine. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, echoing from the darkness, his voice a low, vibrating hum, "Your security system is archaic, Fisk. My drone dismantled it in 3 seconds. Lightning flashed outside, illuminating the massive, reinforced bulletproof glass of the penthouse. Hovering outside in the torrential rain was the Weaver Vanguard. With a casual flick of his wrist, Shallot shattered the 3-inch thick ballistic glass like spun sugar. The storm howled into the luxurious office as Shallot stepped inside, his L-14 advanced armor shrugging off the wind and rain. His visor glowed a piercing, demonic red in the shadows. Fisk didn't panic. He was a mountain of muscle and sheer willpower. He grabbed a massive, solid oak chair, weighing easily over 100 pounds, and hurled it at the intruder with enough force to decapitate a normal man. Shallot Weaver Vanguard didn't even raise his hands. His black, armored tail whipped over his shoulder, slicing clean through the solid oak. The two halves clattered harmlessly to the floor. Wilson Fisk Kingpin, narrowing his eyes, his voice a dangerous rumble, a new player. You have a flair for the dramatic, I'll give you that. But you are a fool to step into my home. The last bug that crawled in here is currently lying on a slab. Fisk charged. He moved with terrifying speed for a man of his size, throwing a colossal, brass-knuckled fist aimed squarely at Shallot's chest, a blow that had once broken Peter Parker's ribs. Shallot Weaver Vanguard grabbing Kingpin by the neck and throwing him against over nearby wall as he teleported in front of Wilson Fisk and using 50% key punches rapidly punching him multiple times, shattering every bone while also grabbing Wilson Fisk and breaking his back with his knee as Wilson Fisk was on the ground bleeding. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, you lucky I was merciful and I'm going to take you to prison permanently, or the next time won't be merciful. Wilson Fisk, coughing violently, blood staining his white suit, you're not human. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, looking down with absolute disgust, the red glow of his visor cutting through the dark, not even close. And I don't share Peter's endless patience for corruption. Shallot didn't just want to break Fisk physically. With a 540 IQ, he knew that a man with Fisk's wealth could run an empire from a hospital bed. He tapped the side of his gauntlet. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, drone. Access his private mainframe. I want every encrypted file, every offshore bank account, every blackmail video, and every bribed politician on his payroll downloaded and broadcasted directly to the FBI, the NYPD, and the federal courts. Leave him with absolutely nothing. The AI drone hovered over Fisk's shattered desk, its blue light scanning the ruined terminals. Within seconds, a holographic progress bar filled up. AI drone, download complete. Network encryption bypassed. All data has been successfully transmitted to law enforcement agencies. Fisk let out a guttural groan of despair as he realized what had just happened. It wasn't just his back that was broken, his entire empire, his immunity, his untouchable status in New York, it was all gone in less than a minute. Shallot aimed his wrist at the defeated crime lord. With a sharp hiss, a thick, metallic blue strand of the hyper-compressed key polymer shot out, wrapping tightly around Fisk and webbing him securely to the floor. The polymer was so strong that even if Fisk had all his strength, he wouldn't be able to budge a millimeter. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, consider this mercy, Fisk. Because out in the multiverse, there are things far worse than me. Enjoy your cage. Shallot turned his back on the broken Kingpin. He walked to the shattered window, the storm outside still raging. He stepped up onto the ledge, his black tail swaying calmly behind him, the rain hissing as it hit his slightly heated L-14 armor. With a massive burst of sonic speed, he launched himself into the stormy sky, leaving Fisk alone in the dark to wait for the sirens that were already wailing in the distance. High in the Daily Bugle building, J. Jonah Jameson was hunched over his desk, chewing aggressively on an unlit cigar. The late-night bullpen was empty, leaving only the erratic clacking of his typewriter. On his desk sat the mock-up for tomorrow's front page. The headline blared in massive, bold letters, "The menace is dead, New York breathes a sigh of relief." Jonah smirked, reaching for his cold cup of coffee. Finally, the masked freak got exactly what was coming too. Crash! The reinforced glass of his office window exploded inward, sending shards raining across the room. The hurricane-force winds of the storm outside ripped through the office, scattering papers and toppling filing cabinets. Out of the tempest stepped the Weaver Vanguard. His L-14 advanced armor was slick with rain, and his tail lashed behind him like an angry whip. The demonic red glow of his visor locked onto the terrified publisher. Jonah scrambled backward, his chair tipping over and spilling him onto the floor. Jonah Jameson, security. Security. Who the hell are you? You want money? Take it. Just don't. Shallot didn't walk, he blurred. In a fraction of a second, he was standing over Jonah, his heavy boot planted firmly on tomorrow's mock-up front page. He reached down, grabbing Jonah by the lapels of his suit, and hoisted the older man off the ground until they were eye to eye. Shallot flared a tiny fraction of his Saiyan ki. The temperature in the room skyrocketed, the sheer pressure of his aura cracking the plaster on the walls and making it hard for Jonah to breathe. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, his voice a terrifying, reverberating rumble. Your lies killed him. You poisoned this city against its greatest protector. You screamed, menace, so loud that supposed geniuses locked him in a collar and served him up to be slaughtered. Jonah Jameson, trembling violently, his face pale. I just print the news. The public has a right to know. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, you manufacture hate for profit. But that ends tonight. Shallot's AI drone floated into the room, projecting a holographic display of the Bugle's mainframe and financial records. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, my drone just bypassed your firewalls. I have every email, every draft, every shady backroom deal you've made to push your narratives. Tomorrow's headline isn't going to be this garbage. Shallot crushed the mock-up in his fist. Tomorrow, you print a retraction. You print the truth about Peter Parker's sacrifice. You honor him as the hero he was. Shallot dropped Jonah back onto the floor. The publisher gasped for air, clutching his chest. Shallot Weaver Vanguard, if I see one more lie printed about the spider, I won't just break your window. Understand? Jonah, completely stripped of his usual bluster, could only nod in absolute terror. Satisfied, Shallot stepped backward, falling out the shattered window and vanishing into the rainy skyline. An hour later, the storm had broken, leaving the New York skyline glittering under a clear night sky. On his hidden Queens rooftop, the terrifying Weaver Vanguard was gone. In his place was just Shallot, wearing his dark tactical cargo pants and a fitted black undershirt. His body was aching, transforming, flying at supersonic speeds, and the sheer emotional toll of the day had drained his Saiyan metabolism to its absolute limit. His stomach let out a thunderous, embarrassing growl. Shallot, yeah, I hear you. He walked over to his massive, custom-built outdoor kitchen. Using his 540 IQ, he had heavily modified standard Earth appliances. He cranked the dial on his hyper-pressurized grill, the burners igniting with a roar of blue flame. Within minutes, the rooftop smelled like heaven. Shallot was a blur of culinary precision. He tossed massive, thick-cut steaks onto the grill, searing them to perfection in seconds. He boiled pots of rich, savory ramen, tossing in chopped vegetables, spices, and an entire crate of eggs. His tail casually held a spice rack, passing him ingredients as his hands moved at blinding speeds. Finally, he sat down at his reinforced steel workbench, surrounded by towering mountains of food. A dozen empty bowls already sat to his left, and he was currently inhaling a massive plate of Earth Saiyan fusion dumplings. Shallot, talking with his mouth full, pausing to swallow a pound of steak. Gotta admit, Earth food, unbelievable. The spices here are way better than anything on Sadala. His AI drone hovered nearby, projecting a calm blue light over the workbench. Resting next to his plate was Peter Parker's torn red mask. Shallot slowed his eating. He picked up the fabric, his expression softening from his usual laid-back demeanor into one of profound respect. The rage that had fueled him against the Sinister Six, Kingpin, and Jameson had simmered down, replaced by the heavy, grounding reality of his new responsibility. Shallot, I took out the trash for you today, Peter. But I know that's not all it takes to be a hero. It's not just about breaking the bad guys, it's about catching the people who fall. He folded the mask neatly, placing it in a secure compartment on his workbench. He grabbed another massive bowl of noodles, a small, determined smile crossing his face. Shallot, I've got a lot to learn about this city. But I'll make sure they never forget you. Shallot was just lifting his 15th bowl of spicy beef ramen to his mouth when his AI drone suddenly flashed from a calm blue to a pulsing, urgent yellow. AI drone, alert. Too high level. Physiological signatures detected. Approaching the perimeter from the fire escape. Tactical assessment, highly dangerous. Shallot didn't even blink. He took a long, loud slurp of noodles, swallowed, and gently set the bowl down on his reinforced workbench. He didn't bother putting on his Weaver Vanguard armor. He just sat there in his black undershirt and cargo pants, his Saiyan tail swishing lazily behind him. A heavy metallic clank echoed from the edge of the roof, followed by the soft thud of combat boots. Stepping out of the shadows was Captain America, his vibranium shield strapped securely to his arm. Flanking him was Wolverine, already half-crouched, his nostrils flaring as he took in the scent of the rooftop. Wolverine, growling, his adamantium claws sliding out with a metallic snick, smells like cheap takeout, alien tech, and Kingpin's blood. You've been a busy kid tonight. Captain America, raising a hand to steady Logan, his tone authoritative but calm. Stand down, Logan. We're just here to talk. Son, my name is Steve Rogers. The energy spikes you've been giving off all night lit up every sensor in Avengers Tower. We know what happened to Peter, and we know what you did to Fisk and the Sinister Six. We need you to come with us. Shallot slowly stood up. He grabbed a napkin, wiped his mouth, and tossed it onto the grill. His 540 IQ instantly analyzed their stances, their muscle tension, and the vibranium and adamantium signatures they carried. Shallot, where were you? Cap frowned, confused. Excuse me. Shallot, his voice dropping to a dangerous, icy register when the Daily Bugle turned the city against him. When Reed Richards strapped a dampening collar around his neck like a dog. When a teenager was bleeding out on the pavement, where were Earth's mightiest heroes? Captain America, it's complicated. We operate on a global scale, and… Shallot, save the PR speech for the cameras. You're hypocrites. You let him die, and now you want to police the guy who cleaned up your mess. Get off my roof. Wolverine snarled, lunging forward with explosive speed, his claws aimed to pin Shallot to the brick wall. I've heard enough from the punk. The disassembly. Shallot didn't transform. He didn't even flare his ki. He relied entirely on his martial arts mastery and his crushing Saiyan-based strength. The fight lasted exactly 12 seconds. Breaking the mutant, Wolverine closed the distance, slashing in a cross pattern. Shallot sidestepped with a blur of speed, moving faster than Logan's enhanced senses could track. Knowing Logan's bones were coated in unbreakable metal, Shallot targeted the soft tissue. He drove a devastating palm strike directly into Logan's diaphragm. The concussive, ki-infused force bypassed the ribcage entirely, violently rupturing Logan's liver and lungs. As Wolverine gasped, coughing up blood, Shallot grabbed his wrists, twisted flawlessly, and brutally dislocated both of Logan's shoulders, tearing the indestructible joints from their sockets. He kicked Logan across the roof, leaving the mutant crumpled and out of the fight while his healing factor struggled to repair his busted organs. Shattering the captain, Cap yelled, hurling his vibranium shield with pinpoint accuracy. Shallot didn't dodge. He caught the edge of the shield with one bare hand, his Saiyan grip stopping the invincible metal dead in its tracks. Before Cap could react, Shallot closed the gap. He drove a brutal, sweeping kick right into Cap's lead leg, snapping the super soldier's femur with a sickening crack. As Cap fell forward, Shallot delivered a punishing elbow strike directly into Steve's chest. The blow shattered 3 ribs and bruised Cap's heart and lungs, sending the Avenger crashing into the gravel, entirely incapacitated. Shallot stood over the 2 broken heroes. The rooftop was completely silent, save for Wolverine's ragged, bloody coughing and Cap's strained groans of agony. Shallot tossed the vibranium shield. It clattered loudly onto the concrete right next to Steve's head. Shallot, looking down at them, his eyes cold and devoid of any respect. Your bodies will heal. But let this be a lesson. You don't own this city anymore. The Weaver Vanguard does. If the Avengers get in my way again, I won't hold back. Shallot turned his back on the fallen icons, walking calmly back to his workbench. He picked up his bowl of ramen, the steam still rising from the broth. The next morning, the sun broke over a city still reeling from the sudden absence of its web-slinging protector and the mysterious, brutal dismantling of its criminal empire. Shallot, dressed in his civilian attire, dark cargo pants, a blue leather jacket with a high collar, and a beanie that kept his wild, spiky hair somewhat contained, walked casually through the sleek, glass-paneled lobby of Horizon Labs. His black Saiyan tail was wrapped securely around his waist, hidden beneath his jacket. He needed a legitimate income to fund his tech, his massive food budget, and to keep a pulse on the city's scientific advancements. Horizon Labs, known for hiring the absolute brightest minds on Earth without caring about their background, was the perfect cover. He was escorted into the primary R&D floor for his interview, right into the middle of a crisis. Max Modale, the head of Horizon, was sweating profusely alongside 3 senior scientists. They were staring at a massive, glowing holographic blueprint of a clean energy fusion reactor. Warning klaxons were blaring softly in the room. The simulation was failing, predicting a catastrophic meltdown. Max Modale, the containment field can't handle the localized energy spikes. If we push the plasma through the magnetic aperture, the friction tears the housing apart. We've run the math 100 times. Shallot stopped walking. He didn't even look at the scientists, his eyes simply scanned the floating equations. His 540 IQ processed the complex astrophysics and quantum mechanics in less than a microsecond. To a Saiyan who regularly manipulated raw, world-shattering key energy, this was child's play. Shallot, casually leaning against a glass partition, you're bottlenecking the thermal kinetic output because you're treating the plasma like a linear liquid. It's multidimensional. The room fell dead silent. Max and the senior scientists turned to look at the laid-back, 20-something guy in a leather jacket. Senior scientist, excuse me. Who let the intern in here? The math is flawless, kid. The materials just can't handle the heat. Shallot, the materials are fine. Your approach is archaic. Before anyone could stop him, Shallot walked up to the master console. His hands moved in a literal blur, too fast for the human eye to track. He bypassed their security codes in a millisecond, rewriting the base code of the containment field, adjusting the magnetic dampeners by a fraction of a millimeter, and completely restructuring the energy matrix into a Saiyan-inspired crystalline lattice pattern. He hit enter. The red warning lights instantly turned a soothing, stable blue. The holographic reactor hummed with perfect, 100% efficient harmony. The energy output readings skyrocketed off the charts without a single fluctuation in heat. Max Modale's jaw practically hit the floor. He took off his glasses, rubbing his eyes as he looked from the screen to Shallot. Max Modale, stammering, utterly mind-blown, how did you? You just solved a quantum thermodynamics problem that stumped the world's greatest minds for a decade. In 10 seconds. Shallot, shrugging, offering a relaxed smile, I dabble in a little bit of everything. I'm Shallot. I hear you're looking for a new lead engineer. Max Modale, lead engineer. Kid, you can have your own private lab, unlimited funding, and whatever you want from the cafeteria. You're hired. Later that afternoon, the sky turned a somber, overcast gray as a light drizzle began to fall over the Queen's Cemetery. Shallot stood silently in the wet grass, his hands buried deep in the pockets of his jacket. In front of him was a fresh, simple headstone, Peter Parker. Beloved nephew. There were no crowds. The city at large still thought of Spider-Man as a menace, thanks to Jameson's lingering poison. Shallot stared at the engraved letters, the heavy, crushing weight of the Weaver Vanguard mantle pressing down on his shoulders. He had the strength of a god, the mind of a super genius, and the speed to break the sound barrier. And yet, looking at the grave, he felt a haunting, suffocating familiarity. Voice, still carrying the weight of the entire universe on your shoulders, brother. Shallot's breath hitched. The air around him suddenly dropped in temperature. He didn't need to turn around to recognize that voice. It was a voice identical to his own, yet laced with a rougher, older sorrow. Shallot slowly turned his head. Standing a few feet away, leaning against a weathered oak tree, was Giblet. His twin brother looked exactly as he had on the day he died, wearing his signature crimson-red Saiyan coat over his dark armor. But Giblet wasn't entirely there. His form was slightly translucent, a ghostly manifestation born from Shallot's own immense ki and the deep, unresolved grief scarring his mind. Shallot, his voice cracking slightly, dropping his calm facade. Giblet. I. Giblet ghost stepping forward, his boots making no sound on the wet grass. You're doing it again, Shallot. You're looking at this grave, and you're seeing me. Shallot looked down at his hands. He sacrificed himself for a stranger. Just like you did for me. I had all this power. Super Saiyan God, and I still couldn't save you. I couldn't save him. Giblet's ghostly expression softened. He walked up to his twin, standing shoulder to shoulder with him in front of Peter's grave. "Giblet Ghost, you think my sacrifice was a failure on your part. You think this human throwing his life away to save you makes you weak. You're a fool, Shallot." Shallot looked up at his brother's spirit. "Giblet Ghost, a true warrior doesn't lay down his life because he's forced to. He does it because he chooses to. I chose to save you because I believed in the man you were becoming. This, Peter, chose to save you because it was the right thing to do. Their blood isn't on your hands, brother. It's the fuel for your fire." Giblet reached out, his translucent hand resting firmly on Shallot's shoulder. Shallot couldn't physically feel it, but the warmth of his brother's ki echoed in his soul. "Giblet Ghost, stop looking at the past like a graveyard of your failures. You are a Saiyan. You are a genius. And now, you are this city's vanguard. Don't mourn our sacrifices. Make them mean something." Shallot closed his eyes, taking a deep, shuddering breath. When he opened them again, the deep sorrow in his gaze had been replaced by an unbreakable, hardened resolve. He looked to his side, but Giblet was gone. The only sound was the gentle patter of the rain hitting the gravestones. Shallot reached into his jacket, pulling out a single, perfectly engineered mechanical spider tracer he had built that morning. He placed it gently on top of Peter's headstone. "Shallot, I promise. Both of you." He turned away from the grave, pulling his beanie down tight, his eyes locked on the Manhattan skyline in the distance. The sprawling, glass-enclosed space of Lab 7 inches at Horizon Labs had been completely transformed in less than 24 hours. For a normal scientist, settling in would take weeks. For Shallot, with his 540 IQ and Saiyan work ethic, it was barely a morning's effort. He sat cross-legged on a hovering, anti-gravity chair he had built out of spare parts before his morning coffee. To his left, a massive hot plate was searing a stack of 24 thick-cut pork chops. To his right, 4 holographic interfaces were rendering complex molecular structures. His AI drone floated happily above the desk, managing the server partitions. Shallot was keeping his promise. He wasn't just going to punch villains, he was going to elevate the entire city. Healing the city, public projects. Max Modale had given him unlimited funding, and Shallot was putting it to use to help the people Peter had died protecting. His hands blurred across the haptic keyboards as he finalized 2 massive public tech initiatives. Project Senzu Bio-Gel. Using his deep understanding of Saiyan cellular regeneration and Earth's botany, Shallot synthesized a localized, hyper-accelerated healing gel. Applied to severe burns, lacerations, or broken bones, it triggered the body's natural healing factor to work at 500% efficiency. It was cheap to mass-produce, and he was already prepping the patent to give it to New York's hospitals for free. Gravimetric mobility braces. Analyzing the horrific injuries caused by supervillain collateral damage, Shallot reverse-engineered localized gravity fields to create sleek, lightweight braces. They allowed paralyzed individuals to walk and move with absolute freedom, bypassing damaged spinal cords entirely. The door to Lab 7 hissed open, and Max Modale walked in, stopping dead in his tracks. He stared at the hovering chair, the mountain of pork chops, and the glowing blueprints of the bio-gel. "Max Modale, Shallot, I left you alone for 4 hours. Did you just cure severe nerve damage before lunch?" Shallot, taking a massive bite of a pork chop, speaking with his mouth half full. "The math was pretty straightforward, Max. The gravity fields just needed a multi-frequency dampener. I sent the schematics to fabrication. We should have 100 prototypes ready for the physical therapy wards by tomorrow morning." Max slowly sat down in a standard chair, rubbing his temples in sheer disbelief. "You are terrifyingly brilliant, kid. The board is going to lose their minds. The Vanguard's arsenal classified projects." What Max didn't know was that while Shallot's AI drone was projecting the bio-gel schematics, it was simultaneously running a partitioned, hyper-encrypted subroutine that even Horizon's mainframe couldn't detect. Beneath the false bottom of his reinforced workbench, Shallot's fabricators were forging the next generation of the Weaver. Vanguard's arsenal. Key-infused tracers. Upgrading Peter's classic design, these microscopic robotic spiders didn't rely on radio frequencies. They emitted a sub-audible key signature that only Shallot's Saiyan senses and his visor could track. They were completely invisible to tech sweeps and mutant senses. Grav web cartridges. Fusing his new gravity tech with his hyper-compressed polymer web fluid, Shallot created web bombs that, upon impact, generated a localized 50G gravity well, enough to instantly pin a rampaging brute like the rhino to the floor without throwing a single punch. Acoustic dampening soles. He integrated a microscopic sound-canceling frequency into the boots of his L-14 advanced armor, making his footsteps completely silent, even to someone with enhanced hearing. Max finally stood up, shaking his head with a bewildered smile. "Keep doing what you're doing, Shallot. I'm going to call the mayor's office about this biogel." As the lab doors closed behind Max, Shallot's demeanor shifted. The laid-back inventor vanished, replaced by the hardened vanguard. "Shallot, drone, bring up the police scanners and cross-reference them with the bugle's deep web chatter." The AI drone pulsed red. "AI drone, alert. Massive energy spikes detected at the Oscorp chemical processing plant. Surveillance footage indicates heavily armed mercenaries, and a figure matching the profile of Norman Osborn." Shallot's eyes narrowed. The Green Goblin. The monster who had snapped Peter's neck while he was helpless. The ghost of Giblet's advice echoed in his mind, "Make their sacrifices mean something." Shallot stood up, his tail uncoiling as he cracked his knuckles. He walked toward his hidden locker, the sleek, dark plating of the Weaver Vanguard suit waiting for him. The Oscorp chemical processing plant was a fortress of floodlights and armed mercenaries. High above the catwalks, the Green Goblin hovered on his gleaming glider, his manic, cackling laughter echoing through the industrial complex. He was overseeing the loading of highly volatile chemical weapons, completely drunk on the power vacuum left by Spider-Man's death. Green Goblin, faster, you imbeciles. With the spider exterminated, this city is finally mine to harvest. No more webs, no more morals, just glorious chaos. He didn't notice the shadows shifting above him. Shallot crouched on a steel girder directly above the goblin. His new acoustic dampening soles rendered him entirely silent, and the phantom weave tech in his L-14 armor bent the light around him, making him virtually invisible. He looked down at the cackling monster who had snapped Peter Parker's neck like a twig while he was helpless. The cold, calculating vanguard vanished. In its place, the primal, boiling rage of a Saiyan warrior ignited. Shallot dropped the stealth field. He didn't just fall, he propelled himself downward with explosive force. "Shallot, Weaver Vanguard, you talk too much." Before the goblin could even look up, Shallot slammed boots first into the front of the glider, crushing the goblin mask and driving Norman Osborn face first into the steel grating of the catwalk. The impact was so severe it sheared the glider in half, sending smoking debris raining down on the terrified mercenaries below. Norman rolled, his enhanced goblin physiology absorbing the impact as he sprang to his feet, pulling a razor bat from his satchel. Green Goblin, snarling, spitting blood, a new bug. "You think wearing a shiny suit makes you a threat? I killed the last one, and I'll mount your head right next to his." Shallot stood up slowly. The memory of Peter's lifeless body hitting the pavement flashed in his mind. The memory of Giblet's sacrifice burned in his soul. "Shallot, you didn't fight a warrior. You executed a helpless kid. Now, you face a Saiyan." Shallot threw his head back and roared. The entire chemical plant shook violently. A blinding, explosive pillar of golden ki erupted from Shallot's body, instantly vaporizing the rain that had begun to fall. His dark hair shot straight up, turning a brilliant, glowing gold, while fierce, jagged arcs of blue bioelectricity crackled and whipped around his body. The sheer atmospheric pressure of his Super Saiyan 2 transformation shattered every glass window in the facility and forced the heavily armed mercenaries below to their knees, gasping for air as gravity itself seemed to crush them. The Green Goblin took a step back, his manic grin faltering as he stared at the terrifying, electrified god standing before him. For the first time in his life, Norman Osborn felt pure, unadulterated terror. "Green Goblin, what are you?" "Shallot, Super Saiyan 2, your executioner." Shallot vanished. He didn't just move fast, he broke the laws of physics. Before Norman's enhanced brain could even register the movement, Shallot reappeared directly in front of him. Crack! Shallot drove a ki-infused fist directly into the goblin's chest. The reinforced armor shattered like glass, and the horrific sound of Norman's ribcage turning to dust echoed over the alarms. Norman's eyes bulged as blood sprayed from his mouth, his body launching backward at supersonic speed. But Shallot didn't let him fly. He grabbed Norman by the ankle midair, ripping him back down with earth-shattering force, slamming him into the concrete floor. Snap! Shallot brought his boot down on Norman's right knee, completely shattering the joint in the femur. Norman let out a blood-curdling, agonizing scream, reaching out with his arms to blindly claw at the Saiyan. Shallot deflected the frantic strikes effortlessly. He grabbed Norman's right arm, twisting it with brutal, mechanical precision until the humerus bone snapped cleanly through the skin. He repeated the process on the left arm, crushing the bones in the goblin's forearms to powder. The goblin serum in Norman's veins tried desperately to heal the damage, but Shallot's Super Saiyan 2 bioelectricity surged into the wounds, frying the regenerative cells on contact and leaving the damage permanent. Green Goblin, weeping, choking on his own blood, reduced to a broken, mangled mess. Stop. Please, stop. Shallot grabbed Norman by the collar, lifting his completely limp, shattered body off the ground. Lightning arched from Shallot's golden hair, his eyes burning with a terrifying turquoise intensity. Shallot, Super Saiyan 2, did you stop when he couldn't fight back? Did you show mercy when you snapped his neck? You're a rabid dog, Osborn. And I'm putting you down. With a final, devastating knee strike directly to Norman's lower spine, Shallot completely shattered the goblin's vertebrae. The sickening crunch echoed through the silent, terrified facility. Norman Osborn went completely limp, his body brutally and permanently crippled from the neck down. Shallot tossed the broken billionaire onto the shattered concrete like a piece of garbage. He powered down, his golden hair fading back to black as the bioelectricity dissipated. The Weaver Vanguard armor was completely spotless. He tapped his gauntlet, deploying a massive, ultra-dense grav web over Norman and his terrified mercenaries, pinning them all to the floor with 50 gigaseconds of localized gravity. Shallot, Weaver Vanguard, drone. Send the anonymous tip to the NYPD. Tell them the goblin is dead. Norman Osborn is all that's left. As the distant wail of police sirens began to echo through the night, Shallot fired a web line into the sky and launched himself into the darkness. The city was learning very quickly, the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man was gone. The Weaver Vanguard had arrived, and his justice was absolute. Deep inside the hyper-sterile medical wing of Avengers Tower, the atmosphere was suffocatingly tense. The holographic displays casting an icy blue glow across the room painted a grim, terrifying picture of the new reality in New York City. Tony Stark paced relentlessly at the foot of a specialized bariatric bio bed, his face drawn and exhausted. On the bed lay Steve Rogers, his chest heavily wrapped in localized stasis bandages, his right leg encased in a rigid vibranium-laced cast. In the corner, Wolverine sat slumped in a reinforced chair, a half-lit cigar dangling from his lips. Logan's mutant healing factor was working overtime, his body practically steaming as it struggled to repair the severe, localized cellular burns left behind by the Saiyan's ki-infused strikes. Standing on the opposite side of the room were Reed Richards and Susan Storm of the Fantastic Four, both looking physically ill as they reviewed the encrypted NYPD crime scene photos from the Oscorp chemical plant. Tony Stark, Iron Man, pinching the bridge of his nose, pulling up a holographic projection of the Oscorp aftermath. Friday, run the structural analysis again. I want to know exactly what kind of ordnance caused this. Friday, AI, boss, the analysis remains unchanged. The localized destruction of the Oscorp catwalk, the severing of the Goblin glider, and the complete skeletal pulverization of Norman Osborn were not caused by conventional explosives or enhanced mutant strength. The seismic telemetry indicates a concentrated kinetic impact of approximately 8,000 tons of force per square inch, laced with an unknown, highly irradiated bioelectric energy. Reed Richards stared at the hologram of Norman Osborn's medical chart. The Green Goblin, a man whose serum-enhanced physiology made him nearly indestructible, was currently lying in the raft's maximum security intensive care unit, permanently paralyzed from the neck down, his bones reduced to dust. Reed Richards, his voice hollow, steeped in profound guilt. It wasn't ordnance, Tony. It was him, the boy from the intersection. Tony Stark, Iron Man. A kid in a leather jacket doesn't casually turn Norman Osborn into a quadriplegic and then drop a localized 50G gravity well on a dozen mercenaries. The tech left at that scene, it's decades ahead of anything in my labs. He's using acoustic dampening fields and hyper-compressed polymers that defy terrestrial chemistry. Logan let out a low, ragged cough, spitting a glob of blood into a steel basin. Wolverine, he ain't just a brain, Stark. He's a goddamn wrecking ball. He didn't even use that shiny armor when he took us apart. Just his bare hands. He hit my diaphragm so hard the concussive force bypassed my ribs and liquefied my liver. The kid moved faster than my synapses could fire. Steve Rogers shifted painfully in his bed, his face pale. Captain America. He caught the shield, Tony. Bare-handed. He didn't deflect it, he clamped down on the vibranium edge and stopped its momentum dead. I've fought Hulks, Asgardians, and Titans. I have never felt a baseline strength like that. And the look in his eyes, there was no hesitation. He views us with absolute contempt. The paradigm shift. Susan Storm crossed her arms, shivering despite the climate-controlled room. The memory of the blistering, godlike heat radiating from Shallot's Super Saiyan God aura at the intersection was permanently burned into her mind. Susan Storm, can you blame him? We let Jameson dictate the narrative. She looked at Reed, her voice trembling with a mix of anger and sorrow. You built the collar that stripped Peter of his defenses. And Tony, you tried to confiscate his body like salvage. This, Weaver Vanguard, isn't just taking over Peter's mantle. He's punishing the city for failing him. Reed pulled up the data logs from the NYPD servers, displaying the terrifyingly efficient takedowns of the Kingpin's empire. Warehouse 47, 42 armed enforcers completely crippled in under 3 minutes. 0 fatalities, but 100% permanent physical incapacitation. Fisk Tower, Wilson Fisk's impenetrable security grid bypassed in 3 seconds. Fisk's spine snapped. All financial and blackmail data instantly disseminated to global law enforcement. The Daily Bugle, J. Jonah Jameson psychologically broken, forced to print a full retraction in a memorial for Peter Parker. Reed Richards, he's systematically dismantling the criminal infrastructure of New York, but his methods are apocalyptic. The energy readings my suit picked up when he confronted the police, if he had fully unleashed that heat, it would have leveled Manhattan. If he decides we are too deeply compromised to protect this world, he won't just break our bones. He'll erase us. Tony Stark, Iron Man, slamming his fist on the table, I'm not going to sit here and let an unknown alien asset run a lethal shadow dictatorship in my city. We need to formulate a containment strategy. Hulkbuster protocols won't cut it. We need magical containment, maybe call in Strange, or Wolverine, interrupting with a dark, cynical chuckle, you're not listening, Tin Man. You can't contain him. When he broke my shoulders, he wasn't even breathing hard. He was bored. You send an army after him, and you're just gonna give him more bones to break. The spider pulled his punches to save us from ourselves. This kid, he's making sure they never get back up. Steve Rogers looked up at the ceiling, the heavy burden of leadership weighing heavily on his fractured chest. Captain America, we stand down. Tony Stark, Steve, you can't be serious. Captain America, I am, Tony. If we engage him now, people die. He's functioning as a lethal protector, but his rage is focused entirely on the guilty. Until we understand exactly what we're dealing with, until we know the limits of his power and his tech, we stay out of his way. The Weaver Vanguard owns New York right now. And heaven help the next villain who forgets that. Silence fell over the medical bay, the greatest heroes on Earth forced to swallow the bitter, terrifying reality that they had been entirely outclassed by a Saiyan who was just getting started. The Demon Realm scientist pushed his round glasses up the bridge of his nose, his signature, wide grin stretching across his face. His pale skin and white hair stood out sharply against the dark, swirling void outside his lab window. His tail swished in absolute, giddy excitement as he watched the monitors. On the largest screen, the footage of Shallot's Super Saiyan 2 bioelectricity completely vaporizing the Oscorp catwalk played on a continuous loop. Next to it were biometric readouts of Wolverine's ruptured organs and Kingpin's shattered spine. Fu, giggling to himself, furiously tapping away on a holographic clipboard, oh, this is just fascinating. A Saiyan anomaly taking on a local arachnid mantle. And completely disregarding the moral constraints of the native heroes. The temporal divergence here is absolutely off the charts. Fu swiped his hand through the air, bringing up a complex, three-dimensional helix model. Half of it glowed with the familiar, terrifying purple-black aura of Dark Ki, while the other half was spliced with various unique energy signatures he had successfully harvested since arriving in the Marvel Universe. He walked over to a massive stasis tube. Inside, a swirling mass of black, liquid-like alien matter, a captured piece of a symbiote, was thrashing violently against the glass, desperately trying to escape the agonizing infusion of pure dark ki that Fu was pumping into it. Fu, these local energy sources are so delightfully unstable. Gamma radiation, mutant X genes, cosmic cube fragments, but they all lack that special kick. That little push into absolute, unbridled malice. He turned back to the monitor, zooming in on Shallot's Weaver Vanguard armor. Fu's brilliant mind, capable of manipulating time and space itself, was genuinely impressed by Shallot's 540 IQ engineering. Fu, he's adapting, synthesizing his Saiyan biology with local tech. But a Vanguard needs a true threat to vanguard against, right? Beating up rich men in business suits and guys in flying goblin costumes is just child's play for a Super Saiyan god. Fu reached into his lab coat, pulling out a small, condensed capsule of concentrated dark ki. It radiated an aura so malevolent that the temperature in the lab plummeted. Fu, if Shallot wants to play the brooding protector of New York, we need to test the structural integrity of his resolve. Let's see how his phantom weave handles a variable that doesn't just break bones but shatters reality. Fu tossed the dark ki capsule into the air and slashed it perfectly in half with his ninja sword. The dark energy exploded outward, tearing a tiny, localized dimensional rift directly into the heart of New York City. He was going to seed the 616 universe with his corrupted energy, creating a monster specifically designed to push the Weaver Vanguard to his absolute breaking point. Fu, smiling wickedly as he watched the rift open in the skies above Manhattan, show me what happens when you cross the breaking point, Shallot. Give me all that beautiful data. Times Square was a slaughterhouse. The normal, chaotic bustle of New York had been replaced by a deafening, wet-tearing sound. Carnage, usually a psychotic force of nature, was now something profoundly worse. Infused with Fu's dark ki, the symbiote had mutated into a nightmare of jagged, obsidian-violet spikes and pulsating, tar-like veins. Every time it moved, it left trails of burning, purple ozone in the air. Police cruisers were shredded into scrap metal, their sirens cut short mid-wail. Civilians ran, but the dark ki carnage moved like liquid shadow, its tendrils extending hundreds of feet to snatch, impale, and consume. From the sky, a streak of blue and black descended like a meteor. Shallot hit the pavement with enough force to crater the street, his Weaver Vanguard armor humming as it adjusted to the ambient radiation. Shallot, seeing the gore, his eyes narrowing to slits. Fu, you sick, sadistic experimenter. Shallot engaged immediately. He didn't waste time with warnings. He lunged, his Super Saiyan 2 aura exploding outward. He delivered a flurry of blows that should have disintegrated a normal symbiote, but every time his fist connected, the dark ki rippled, absorbing the impact and lashing back with acidic, reality-warping corruption. The dark ki carnage shrieked, a sound that wasn't human or alien, but a screech of grinding metal and damned souls. It launched a torrent of razor-sharp spikes. Shallot deflected them, but his armor began to smoke, the nanites struggling to repair the corrosion caused by the dark ki. Shallot, grunting as he gets clipped by a tendril, his suit sparking, it's adaptive. The dark ki is reinforcing the symbiote structure, and it's feeding on my own energy. He was being pushed back. The creature was fast, lethal, and fueled by a power that wasn't of this universe. Shallot knew that if he continued at this level, the city wouldn't survive the collateral damage. Shallot, fine, you want to see power. Let's see how much of this you can swallow. The ascendance of the third form. Shallot stopped retreating. He braced his feet into the cracked asphalt. His jaw set, his expression hardening into that of an ancient, terrifying warrior. He didn't just power up, he ascended. The street beneath him didn't just crack, it disintegrated. A massive, golden pillar of energy erupted from his body, tearing through the clouds and turning the night sky into a blinding, auric day. The pressure was so intense that the nearby glass skyscrapers shattered inward. His brow ridge furrowed, his hair grew, long, cascading, golden waves flowing down his back, and his eyebrows vanished into his hairline. Super Saiyan 3 Shallot stood in the center of the carnage. The bioelectricity around him was no longer jagged sparks, It was a continuous, roaring ocean of gold and blue, crackling with a terrifying, constant thunder. The dark key Carnage paused, its primitive, psychotic mind registering the apex predator in its presence. It shrieked and lunged with a massive, spiked maw. Shallot didn't even move his feet. He simply swiped his hand. The sheer displacement of air from the motion created a vacuum shockwave that caught the symbiote midair, tearing its limbs away from its core before it could even strike. Shallot, Super Saiyan 3, his voice vibrating with a dual tone, godlike resonance, you are a plague. And I am the cure. Shallot vanished. He reappeared behind the monstrosity, his hand glowing with a dense, concentrated ball of golden energy. He didn't punch, he erased. He drove his palm into the center of the symbiote's mass. The resulting explosion wasn't fire, it was pure, unadulterated ki. The blast vaporized the dark key corruption instantly, searing the symbiote so thoroughly that it couldn't reform. For miles in every direction, the city was illuminated by the golden light of a Saiyan god punishing evil. When the dust settled, only a smoking, charred crater remained in Times Square. The symbiote was gone, burnt out of existence by the sheer intensity of Shallot's transformation. Shallot stood in the center of the crater, his long, golden hair slowly retracting, the massive power dissipating as he dropped back down to his base form, panting heavily. He wiped sweat from his brow, his Weaver Vanguard armor charred and torn. He looked up at the dark sky, knowing full well who had orchestrated this. Shallot, whispering to the empty air, I see you, Fu. Keep playing with your little toys. But the next time you open a rift, make sure it's big enough for me to walk through. The golden aura of the Super Saiyan 3 transformation had barely faded from the Manhattan skyline before Shallot, now back in his civilian attire and nursing a massive, world-weary headache, touched down on the rooftop of Horizon Labs. His armor was smoking and retracted into his gauntlets, and he looked like he'd just spent a week in a blender. He stumbled through the reinforced doors of Lab 7, expecting the hum of his servers and the smell of his leftover pork chops. Instead, the lab was filled with a blinding, soft green radiance. Max Modale and a small group of senior engineers were crowded around the center of the room, staring at a new, sleek generator that Shallot had left in a test phase before his fight with Carnage. It was the Sadala Nova reactor, an eco-friendly, zero-emission power source that utilized a stable, microscopic shard of key crystal to power an entire city block indefinitely. Max Modale, turning around, his face pale with shock, Shallot. Where have you been? The city is falling apart, but this machine just achieved a net positive energy output of 10,000%. You didn't just build a reactor, you just made fossil fuels, nuclear energy, and even Stark's arc reactor obsolete in a single afternoon. Shallot leaned against a workbench, grabbing a cold bottle of water and downing it in one go. He ignored the question about where he'd been, his 540 IQ already scanning the reactor's output logs. Shallot, raspy-voiced, but calm, it's not just a reactor, Max. It's a localized atmospheric scrubber too. It pulls carbon directly from the air and converts it into the cooling medium. You could run this in the middle of a coal plant and the air would come out smelling like a pine forest in 10 minutes. The engineers were frantically taking notes, some of them even crying. They realized that this kid hadn't just given them a job, he had given them the future of the planet. Senior engineer, sir, if we mass produce this, poverty, energy wars, climate change, it all starts to disappear. We could save the world. Shallot offered a tired, genuine smile. For all the bones he had broken tonight as the Weaver Vanguard, this was the part of being a hero that actually made him feel like he was honoring Peter's legacy. He wasn't just catching people when they fell, he was building a floor so high they'd never fall again. Shallot, then let's get to work. I want the blueprints open sourced. No patents, no corporate hoarding. If a village in the middle of nowhere needs power, they get a Nova reactor. Period. Max looked at Shallot with a level of respect that bordered on reverence. You're a strange one, Shallot. You walk in here looking like you fought a war, then you casually hand over the keys to utopia. Shallot, just doing what a hero does, Max. Now, please tell me there's more food in the cafeteria. I'm literally about to eat the table. As the scientists celebrated, Shallot glanced at his AI drone, which projected a tiny, hidden holographic alert in his peripheral vision. Shallot, however, had shut off his comms. He was currently standing in front of a mirror in his apartment, wearing a crisp black button-down and dark jeans, trying, and failing, to get his spiky Saiyan hair to lay flat. His tail was tucked snugly beneath his belt line. Sylvian, leaning against the doorframe, a playful smirk on her face. Give it up, Shallot. That hair has a mind of its own. Besides, I like the, just survived an explosion, look. It's very you. Shallot turned, his expression instantly softening. Sylvian looked radiant, and for a moment, the weight of the Weaver Vanguard, the ghost of Giblet, and the threat of Fu vanished. Shallot, I was going for, distinguished scientist, but I'll settle for, not a mess. Ready for the best meal in Manhattan. I've already pre-ordered the entire menu at that fusion place in Chelsea. The afternoon was perfect. They walked through Central Park, Shallot using his 540 IQ to explain the precise physics of why the leaves were changing color, only to be shushed by Sylvian whenever he got too technical. They ate enough food to feed a small army, and for a few hours, Shallot was just a guy on a date. They were currently sitting at an outdoor cafe, sharing a massive dessert platter, when the atmosphere shifted. The sidewalk began to vibrate. People started looking up, pointing toward a red and gold streak descending from the clouds. A moment later, Iron Man landed in the middle of the street, followed closely by a Quinjet that hovered just above the tree line. Tony Stark stepped out of the armor, looking haggard and desperate. Behind him, Steve Rogers, still leaning heavily on a high-tech cane, and a visibly weary Susan Storm approached the table. The patrons of the cafe gasped, pulling out phones. Shallot just sighed, slowly putting down his spoon. Shallot, without looking up, you have 3 seconds to tell me why you're ruining my dessert before I launch that tin suit into the Atlantic. Tony Stark, Shallot, look, we know we started on the wrong foot. Beyond the wrong foot. But something is happening. A dimensional rift opened over the raft. It's not just energy, it's a corruption. The inmates, the guards, they're changing. It's that purple light you fought in Times Square. Captain America. We tried to contain it, but we can't even get close. It's feeding on our powers. We're not here to arrest you or recruit you, son. We're here because we're out of options. New York is going to fall if we don't stop this. Sylvian looked at the heroes, then at Shallot. She reached across the table, squeezing his hand. She knew the look in his eyes, the same one Peter had. Sylvian, go. I'll keep your dessert warm. Just, try not to break the city this time. Shallot stood up, his relaxed demeanor evaporating. The air around him began to hum with a low-frequency vibration as he looked at the Avengers. Shallot, I told you to stay out of my way. But if you're finally admitting you can't handle the job, I'll finish it. But we're doing this my way. No collars, no containment protocols, and Stark. If you try to scan my energy signature one more time, I'll delete your AI. Tony Stark actually nodded, a look of genuine humility on his face. Fair enough. Let's go. Shallot didn't wait for the Quinjet. He looked at Sylvian, gave her a quick wink, and then vanished in a golden flash, leaving a sonic boom that rattled the windows of the cafe. The sky over the Atlantic didn't just turn purple, it tore open like a jagged wound. As the Avengers, Quinjet struggled to stay airborne amidst the spatial turbulence, Shallot hovered at the center of the storm. His Weaver Vanguard armor pulsed with a deep, warning red as his HUD struggled to calculate the sheer volume of power pouring through the rift. Tony Stark, via comms, Shallot, sensors are going haywire. We're picking up thousands of high-yield energy signatures. It's not a monster, it's an invasion. From the void, thousands of spherical, white and red space pods streaked toward the Earth like a meteor shower. They didn't land, they hovered, and out of the hatches stepped a nightmare Shallot knew all too well. Thousands of soldiers in bladed armor, armed with wrist-mounted blasters, filled the Manhattan sky. At the center of the armada sat a floating, high-tech hover pod. Inside, the small, chilled tyrant swirled a glass of red wine, his red eyes gleaming with sadistic amusement as he looked at the Chrysler building. Frieza. Oh, what a quaint little planet. So many skyscrapers, it'll be a shame to turn it all to ash. Soldiers. Claim this world for the Empire. Exterminate anyone who offers even a hint of resistance. Shallot looked at the Avengers, then at the thousands of soldiers descending on the city below. He knew his Horizon Labs tech and his base power wouldn't be enough to protect everyone simultaneously. Shallot, Stark, Rogers, get to the ground. Protect the civilians with everything you've got. I'll take the sky. Captain America, Shallot, there are thousands of them. You can't. Shallot, I'm a Saiyan. Watch me. Shallot didn't just power up, he bypassed Super Saiyan 1, 2, and 3 entirely. He centered his mind on the 540 IQ calculations of God Ki, the memory of Peter's sacrifice, and the weight of the Weaver Vanguard mantle. The air turned still. A brilliant, calm blue light began to emanate from his body. Shallot, ha! A massive, silent explosion of sapphire energy cleared the clouds for miles. When the light faded, Shallot stood in his Super Saiyan blue form. His hair was a vibrant, glowing cyan, and his aura was a shimmering, godlike flame. The Frieza force froze. They had seen this power before. Shallot, Super Saiyan Blue, his voice echoing across the entire city, this world is under the protection of the Weaver Vanguard. If you want it, you have to go through me. The battle was a blur of cosmic proportions. Shallot moved at speeds that made the Avengers look like statues. He fired massive, blue ki blasts that intercepted Frieza's capital ships mid-air, while his web shooters, upgraded with Nova energy, pinned squads of soldiers to the sides of buildings. Frieza snarled, standing up from his throne. A Saiyan monkey playing hero. How revolting. I'll enjoy killing you even more than I enjoyed destroying your planet. Frieza lunged, transforming into his golden form, and the two collided over the Empire State Building. The shockwave of their first punch shattered every window in a 10-block radius. The fight was a masterclass in Saiyan brutality and spider-like agility. Shallot used his 540 IQ to predict Frieza's movements, weaving through death beams and countering with bone-shattering strikes. With a final, roaring blue wild cannon, Shallot blasted Frieza back into the rift. He didn't just push him out, he used his technical genius to synchronize the Nova reactors across the city, creating a massive, gravitational anchor that pulled the entire Frieza force back into the void. Shallot, close it, now! The rift collapsed with a deafening pop, leaving the New York sky clear and the morning sun rising over a saved world. Months later, New York had fully transitioned to Nova energy. The Avengers had officially retired the Menace narrative, dedicating a massive statue in Central Park to Peter Parker, and another, more mysterious one, to the Weaver Vanguard. Shallot sat on his rooftop, eating a massive bowl of ramen. His tail swayed contentedly. He had finally found a balance between being a scientist, a Saiyan, and a spider. Sylvian, ready to go. The benefit dinner at Horizon starts in an hour. Shallot, just one more bite. As Sylvian went back inside, Shallot's AI drone projected a single, hidden message on his visor. It was from a secure, untraceable frequency. Message: excellent data, Shallot. The 616 universe is officially the most interesting sandbox in the multiverse. But don't get too comfortable. I found something in the rift, something Peter Parker left behind. A blurred image appeared on the screen. It was a heart monitor. Beep, beep, beep. Inside a stasis pod in a hidden dimension, a hand twitching with the faint, familiar spark of a spider sense. Shallot stood up, a small, knowing smirk crossing his face. He looked at the mask sitting on his workbench. Shallot, I'll be waiting, foo. And so will he. Shallot leapt off the roof, not into a fight, but into the bright, hopeful future he had built. And this the end of this amazing crossover movie, What If? If you guys want to say more amazing crossover What If content, then don't forget to leave a comment down below and subscribe to the channel.